Eric, Underdogs of Addiction. We're back after a while. And as the title says, I'm back in rehab. How the hell did I end up back here? Well, I'm going to tell you, those of you who've been following the channel know that I did a whole year in inpatient between Boise, Idaho and Portland, Oregon. Treehouse Recovery, Eagle Creek Ranch, and Hope Guide Sober Living. Against advice, 2 years ago, I decided to come home, relapsed, got clean for 4 months, got a job as a peer counselor, got a nice apartment, got into what I thought was a good relationship, but of course it was with another addict and a person that I've been dating off and on since I was 10 years old. And she lied to me about being clean off opiates and basically faked pregnancy, trauma bonds, and doing everything that someone fresh in recovery shouldn't do. And being in a relationship with another addict is pretty much a guaranteed relapse. So when I got out of rehab, I worked as a peer counselor. Of course, about 7 months in, shit hit the fan with my relationship. Caught her smoking fentanyl. I lost my job. This is December of last year. Lost my job, lost my apartment, was diagnosed with bipolar 2. It always gets worse, right? So about Christmas Eve last year, I ended up at a behavioral hospital in Olympia, Washington, where I'm from. I was feeling suicidal. I've only ever done coke and alcohol, ecstasy, stuff like that. I wanted to try harder drugs. I had been around a friend. We were doing coke one night and he started hot reeling meth by me. And, then I saw my ex-girlfriend smoking fat. And just like with coke, when I tried coke, I started seeing people doing it and they looked like they're having fun. And I knew I was in trouble because I started being around people doing that. And it was just a matter of time until I tried another drug that I may not be able to come back from. And I remember being in that bed on Christmas Eve and just crying and feeling horrible because, when I confronted my ex about her using drugs, she completely ignored me and I was very dependent on her emotionally. And she knew how to hurt me and she just ghosted me for 30 days. Ended up showing up at her old apartment to get some of my stuff and just to talk to her, but she completely unempathetic, didn't care, and called the cops on me. And so that was the last time I went over there. That was like December of last year. I came home and I was like, man, the girl I love is choosing drugs over me. I can't see her daughter, which was like a stepdaughter to me, who I was close to. I'm losing my apartment, my job. I'm a failure. I went to 2 commercial treatment centers that was like 120 grand if you talk about insurance money. How come I'm not sober? How can I not stay sober? I went into treatment the first 2 times thinking, once I get this over with, I don't ever have to do any recovery. So I hadn't worked any of the steps in AA or had a sponsor that spoke to me. And so I came home and it was the same cycle that I did before treatment. Get clean for 2 to 4 months max, relapse, same cycle. Coming home, it was so hard. My brother told me, he's like, don't come back to Olympia where you're from because your traumas here are going to eat you alive. And of course, I want to listen to what I want to do. And so I come home and I'm like, I'm gonna move downtown where all the bars are. And so it was just a matter of time. I started using again 3 months before I got fired from my peer counseling job. Went on a crazy 2-day bender and I just couldn't show up to work and I lost that job. And it's over time, it's only worse, never better. I'm grateful for my year in treatment. I started to uncover the trauma, connect with other men and start to heal. But I was now being where I'm at 3 years later, I realized I have no idea. I still don't have any idea really of how I'm going to stay sober long term. All I have is my sponsor who's got 15 years and people like Andrew from Eagle Creek and my homies over there telling me what I need to do to get there. Because I, left under my own devices, will be drunk and high. I could go right now if I wanted. And so basically I was in that crisis. I ended up going to outpatient treatment for mental health and addiction after that. I got clean for 3 months. But then again, I didn't want to do the AA work. I'll be good. And well, of course, the same cycle. I have 3 or 4 people that are homies that also sell and basically have an abundance of the drug that I want. And I'm broke. And so here becomes the dark side of me that I don't like to look into, that I'm a manipulator, that I'm self-centered. And next thing you know, I'm manipulating friends, I'm manipulating family for money, manipulating even drug dealers, and telling them, hey, I'm going to get you some money back, knowing that I don't have the money. And some of these guys were like friends, like I knew them before he got into that stuff. And I remember just the last time I went out, my own homie that was giving me shit told me like, dude, I think like something's wrong with you. Like you need to get help. And what started happening on this run, my sponsor told me, he said, you need to keep drinking and using because you're not in a place of surrender and or you're going to die. He goes, I hope that you use enough and you don't die and you have enough pain that you're ready to change. And that's exactly what happened. And, basically once I got to I got through the first three steps and got to step four, and I just froze. I didn't want to look at myself. I always thought that I'm like this really good guy, which I have a side of me that is, but I didn't want to look at the manipulator, the liar, the cheater, the deceiver. And so I'm starting to look at that side of myself. And so basically, once we got on step four, I threw my AA book away. I cursed out God. I was going through a mental health crisis. I had recently been diagnosed with bipolar type 2 with mixed episodes. So trying out meds for that and having to cope with the shame of being like, yo, I got a mental illness on top of the disease of addiction was hard for me to cope with. And, so starting around Labor Day, I just said, fuck it. I was going through a 3-month court battle with my ex. There was multiple false allegations. I had to go to 6 or 7 hearings. They took everything out of me. I didn't have a lawyer, so I was doing all the work. And meanwhile, trying to manage my bipolar 2 and keep a job. And my life became unmanageable. Step one, we admitted we were powerless and our lives became unmanageable, and mine did. Driving drunk, just reckless. Found myself being more aggressive and just in a dark place. And literally 2 weeks ago, the last time I used, it was a day before court, and I was up for 3 days. I had been going through a manic episode. I have never been up for 3 days on coke. And I was drinking and doing coke and on shrooms, I think, at one of the times. And it got so bad that everyone left. Even on the third day, like people tapping out. I'm sitting there in my family's house. I just feel nothing. And I look at the water and I just like, God, I don't feel nothing. I don't feel connected to you right now, but I need a win. If I don't get a win soon, like I can't take any more losses. Like I'm going to just run this to the ground. And that next day I go to court. It's a landslide victory for me. Felt like a weight came off my shoulders. And I haven't had the urge to drink since. And that was a little over 2 weeks ago. I said, Lord, if you take this court case again, away from me and clear me of all these false charges, I will go to any treatment center you open up. And I had my homie Esteban from high school. He was like, my peer in high school got me into weightlifting, and we're on the same football team. He's like a year or two older. He was like, yo, I'm up here in Bellingham. It's like North Washington, right below the border. Beautiful, beautiful college town, Western Washington University. So I started looking for treatment centers. Just so happened I found a 6-month treatment center that takes my insurance. Called the director. It was super cool. They work on mental health and trauma. And a lot of people don't know when you're trying to get into treatment, like especially if it's a Medicaid, you got to put a lot of work in. So I did a mental health assessment. That's 2 hours. Then a drug addiction assessment, 2 hours. How to get all the paperwork, sign all the ROIs. But you're not going to be willing to do that unless you're desperate. I had started doing the paperwork a month before, but I wasn't ready. So I kept partying. And I got to a place where I was done, that I did not want to use anymore. I did the work and just prayed. And the day before I was going to leave the treatment, I couldn't make the choice. I didn't know what to do because I was in a comfortable living situation, living with normal people, but I felt like I was hiding my addiction or my mental health. So even though I was living in this nice house, I feel more comfortable in a sober living house because I don't have to hide myself. That landlord didn't want me to leave, and I just prayed. I said, Lord, just give me a sign. And the next morning I woke up and all I could hear was, if you stay here, you're going to die. And the first feeling I felt when I arrived into Bellingham was freshness, a fresh start, the heaviness gone, living in my hometown, driving past all the places where there was domestic violence and trauma and stuff with my ex or places I partied. It's very hard to escape yourself. And I say you should never run away from your problems, but you should run to something. And my best friend Steve, my best friend Shemek, my mentor Matt, my homie Andrew from Eagle Creek, my boy Brian from Arizona, my peer counselor Janine, my therapist, like everybody was telling me like, bro, you need to get help. And my alcoholic personality was like, I don't know. And that personality is always going to try to get you to do the opposite of what you need to. And my homie Danny, he's got 7 years. He's like a mentor of mine. He said, Zarek, you know what to do. And the more you tap into that voice, the more you can follow it. And I've always struggled with trusting myself. A lot of that just stems from childhood trauma of having inconsistent caregiving. And yeah, and so the crazy story is right when I roll up to this sober living house. And it's like a recovery center with the treatment center connected. And I see a dude smoking with the face tat. And I'm like, oh man, I hope this is cool. And right when I walk up, a dude comes up to me and he has my name tattooed on his hand. And he goes, what's your name? I said, Zarek. And then His hand literally has it. I guess he named his son that, which is ironic because nobody has that name. And I just felt the presence of God in that man's eyes. And this is somebody who's been to prison and is going through a lot, but there was just a good positive vibe. And right then I felt the Holy Spirit speaking. How ironic is that? Is that I show up and the dude literally has my name, Zarek, tattooed on his hand, which is a very uncommon name. This is part of the new series. It's live from rehab. I've already talked to a bunch of the guys here, and I'm going to start sharing testimonies. There's guys here from all over the United States with great stories, different DOCs, but we all got the same disease. Man, my older brother Tony, really told me, hey, man, you're here. You need to make these videos. And so this is my way of being of service, sharing my experience, strength, and hope. This is a unique podcast because the people like me running this, I'm in early recovery. And even though I've had 12 months and 6 months and 4 months, I've only worked up to step 4. But I'm here to tell people like it's a process. When I started on this journey to get clean 10 years ago, well, probably 8 years ago, 2000, yeah, when I was 29 was when I started doing coke and drinking and realizing I had a problem. So I started trying to quit drinking when I was 26. But once the cocaine came, that's when everything just got taken away. My music career, my housing, my money, my cars. It really deteriorated things quicker. And so I've been trying to get clean for a while, and it's been a process. And so if I look at where I was 7 years ago to where I'm at now, I went from 0%, and I think I'm around 70%. And usually when you're about to win, you want to quit. And I've been to 4 outpatient, inpatients, 3 inpatients, 1 outpatient. After a while, you start to just like lose hope. Like maybe I'm just not destined to get clean. But, my sponsor was like, dude, it took me 10 years or 20 years to get 10. I hear other people took 10 years to get 1. And I'm almost around that mark. But it's been so hard for me to stay clean in my hometown. And my sponsor said, do the work until you can go anywhere. And my friend from Capital Christian, where I go to church, she said, Zarek, the only time my recovery worked and while I've been sober 30 years, she's 70, she got clean at 40, is when I went somewhere and I said, there's no time limit. I'm going to stay here. And I think she stayed in a sober living treatment center for 3 years with her kids. And there's been a new experience. When I went to Trails Recovery, it was like, all right, I'm going to get these 7 months. Right away, I wanted to leave. I was completely in my own self-will. And this time around, it's like I'm here and like I'm happy. I got away from all that drama back home and I feel safe and I haven't had any obsession to use, but I know that I'm full of shit and I really have no idea of what I'm doing. And I'm just here to take every suggestion from the staff, from my sponsor. And my main thing for everyone out there that I've learned is, and the people that I've seen stay clean, is they're willing to stop listening to their self and listen to others who've done the work. And I know what's going to keep me clean is accountability and not making excuses and showing up when I'm tired. And also mixed with ready to be done and also willing to give my will to God and trust. I'm the most agnostic Christian you ever meet because I believe in God and had spiritual experiences, but I try to control everything. And I had a lot of shame. And so when I separate that and realize that's my alcoholic addicted personality, and then there's that trauma, then there's my true self. And realizing that those things, they're part of my character, but they're not who I really am. But yeah, guys, I'm going to be doing a series of live from rehab. I'm going to have people who I'm in treatment with share their testimony. It's something I have never really seen done on the internet. Is people actively working towards a recovery, but are in early recovery. And some of these people have had 2, 3, 4, 5 years before, but we're right back here in treatment. And I just think more people can relate to that. And let me know what you want to talk about. I'm glad to be back. I think I pretty much covered everything. It's never better, only worse. I used to think I was just a weekend user, but towards the end this time, I was going on 3-day benders, recovering, from Labor Day up until like 2 weeks ago. I mean, I was using probably 4 or 5 times a week, more than I ever have. And I quickly realized that how this disease goes and where I was heading. And for me, I believe that was enough to get me to the other side. But all I know is these 24 hours, what I'm going to do to stay clean. So thank you guys for watching. I'm so stoked about making more videos. Please subscribe, like, and share this to anyone who needs it. Checking out. This is Zarek here, Underdogs of Addiction. Stay strong. Love y'all.